Hey guys, Jordan here from VFX Vault again, and in this quick product guide we're just going to be going over our countdown clock asset. So this video will just be going over how we can install it, set it up, how we can use it, change a few things and customize it, and the different use cases that it can be used in. If you haven't purchased it yet, I'll leave a link down below in the description to where you can go and take a look. Also, this video will be really good to watch before you purchase it, just so that you know exactly what it can do and what it's used for. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so once you've purchased the asset, you'll be given a zip file. You come to the project that you want to install it into. You right click and you go show in Explorer. You'll be given the content folder on your computer, and then all you need to do after that is you copy in the zip folder. Now you may need to close UEFN, or it may crash if you try to extract the files with UEFN open. So we're going to just close it here, and then if we right click and go extract all, and then we want to take the folder and the file from the extracted folder and drag it in to the content browser, and then we can delete this folder here and the countdown clock UEFN device zip folder. We want to make sure we delete those because we can't use those because it won't reference it properly. So if we delete those, all that we should have left now is the countdown clock and the clock counter device. Now we'll go and reopen UEFN and the assets should be there. So coming back into our project now, we've reopened UEFN, we can drag out our verse counter device, and if we get some verse errors, it may be because you're using an older version of UEFN or a project from an older version. So if we just open up the verse file here, it may say that it's not referencing the correct type. So if you're getting a lot of red errors under the material names, what you'll need to do is come in and rechange the names from M timer counter to M timer counter material, as this is an older version of UEFN that might produce that error just in case, but it should work just fine. It should all compile and be fine. So we go verse, build verse, we save, and once we've dragged our clock counter device into the level, we have a few options. So you can see we've got the toggle timers button, destroy timers button, and the counter array. So in the counter array, this is where we put our clock counters. So what we're going to do now is just go over the different settings and the different versions. So the base version of our clock counter is just a clock that counts upwards. So we'll just go over the different versions here. So every time we initialize a new counter or a new clock, what we need to do is we need to come into our countdown clock folder, and we need to plug in the default counter plane as our counter mesh. This is the mesh that each section of our counter is going to be put on, and we need to plug in the back plate as well. So we can change these later, but we'll go over how to customize it later. We need to set the mesh transform. So this is where is the mesh in the world. We're just going to set it to 350 with a rotation of 90, so it's sort of just above the center point and has a rotation so it's facing sort of forwards. And then we set the back plate scale to 7 and 3 and just 1, so that the back plate is scaled correctly for the clock. So the number set spacing is between each section of our numbers, the minutes, the seconds, the hours, how big is the spacing. You'll need to increase this if you increase the scale. So if we have a scale of 3, 3, 3, we'll need a number set spacing of 300. So it's kind of tethered, or it's sort of relative like that to the scale amount, but we'll just leave it all at 1 for now and 100 for the number set spacing. So here in the text material and the back panel material, we can edit how we want it to look. So we're just going to leave it on default for now, or we can set the color to say green or blue or whatever we want. Let's just set it to this blue just so we can see. And we have emissive intensity, so how bright is it, a gradient texture, so we can turn on a rainbow, a holographic, or a fire. sort of gradient that moves across the text. The roughness in the metallic, you might want it really, really shiny. So if we want to use this gradient texture, we have to enable this checkbox here, gradient, use gradient effect, and then how often are we tiling the effect, the gradient, like its scale, and how fast is it moving, and lastly, is this clock facing the camera? So it will turn to face the player's camera or not. Then in the back panel materials, we have the same thing. We can set the color and we can set if it faces the camera. So those are just the text and the back panel materials to control how it actually looks. And then we can choose if we want to show the back panel or not. And then we show which section of the numbers and the letters. So we have the days, the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and the milliseconds, and the colons between each section of the numbers. So we can turn off days if we don't want to show the days, or if we just want to turn off, let's say, turn off the letters for the hours and the days, so it doesn't show the letters for the hours and the days. So we're just going to pause here, we're going to launch the game, and we're going to see it working. So when you go to launch the game, you may get a bunch of errors like this saying it's not finding the right mount point for the plugin. What we can do is we can just run the fix up, and when we go to launch again, save everything, and it should launch correctly. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you get a bunch of errors, just run the fix up and it should fix it correctly. So you can see when we come back into the game, we have our timer that is just started at 0 and it starts counting up. You can see the days and the hours letters are gone because we turned them off. And you can see we can show the milliseconds, the seconds, and the minutes. So it should work correctly. Now we're going to go over what each different type of setting. So we've got a bunch of different settings that we can use to get the different kind of clocks that we want, and we're going to go over them next. So we have just the default clock counter here that is a clock that just starts counting upwards. What we can do is if we click this here, we've got a few to choose from. So I'm going to do a bit more of a detailed breakdown of what each one does, but just quickly going through them. We have a clock countdown, so we can start a clock at say 1 hour and it counts down and it stops at 0. We have a clock countdown looping, so we can loop once it hits 0, so it counts down from say 1 hour. Once it hits 0, it starts again. We have a clock count from to, so we can give it a time to start at 30 seconds and it will count to 1 minute, and then it will loop back to 30 seconds and count between 30 seconds to 1 minute, or the other way around. We can count from say 2 minutes down to 1 minute, and it will loop after it reaches exactly 1 minute. We have a clock count to or from date, so we can give it a date like January the 1st, 2026, and it's going to count down towards that date and number of days and hours, minutes, seconds to that date in UTC, the Universal Time Code. But keep in mind that we can only represent up to 99 days. So you don't want to have the date set too far away because we have a max limit of 99 days. And it will also count away from a date. So we could set a date, say 3 days ago, and it will start counting up, like how long has it been since that date. Then again, clock count up, so we just start at 0 and we start counting up, and clock count up looping. So we can start at 0 and we can say loop at 1 hour, so it'll start counting up from 0. Once it reaches 1 hour, it will loop again. And then just the clock counter, which is just the simple clock counter that we have shown already. So we're going to go over these one by one. So we'll start with clock countdown. So let's give it a start time offset of 60 seconds. Now when we change the class of the clock counter type, remember that we have to reset all of these options. Just be careful with if you have more than one clock in the array, it might and you copy it. If you have more than one clock in the array and you copy and paste between, it might cause issues. I've noticed that sometimes the values aren't properly represented. So again, we come in, we plug in for the counter mesh, we plug in our default counter plane, and for the backplate, we plug in the backplate. Our start time offset is say 100 or let's say just 30 or 40 seconds. So that means we're starting at 40 seconds and then we're counting down to 0, and we can set the clock speed multiplier. So does it count at 1 second per second or 2 seconds per second? You know what I mean? We can make it go faster or slower if we want. And do we want it to stop at 0? If we don't stop at 0, it's going to start counting up away from 0 once it hits 0. Then again, we need to set the translation. So we go 350 with 90 and the backplate scale of 7, 3, and 1. And we can, this time what we're going to do is, let's pick, say, this greenish color. And we're just going to show, say, numbers, hours. Well, we can turn off hours. We're just going to show numbers, minutes and seconds, and we'll leave the backplate off. So we'll pause that and we'll come back once we've started the game. So coming back into the game, you can see our clock started at 40 seconds and it's counting down. I'm just going to speed up the video here. And now you can see once it reaches 0 seconds, it should stop. Perfect. So next we're going to move on to the clock countdown looping. You can see here we come in, we click, we select clock countdown looping, and we're just going to set it to 5 minutes. And we'll set the time to 300 seconds. So the time is in seconds. And we can offset that time if we want. So if we have like every 5 minutes it's going to loop, but we offset it by 2.5 minutes. You might want to use this offset in UTC time so that you can align this clock with your own personal time zone. Now you need the UTC time zone converter, but these clock countdown looping times, they tick on UTC time, so they cannot be paused. We can use these buttons up here to pause or destroy the clocks if we want to, but these specific looping clocks, if they're using UTC time, they cannot be paused. So next we're going to plug in our counter mesh again. We'll set it to 350 and we'll set the rotation to 90 again, and the backplate scale to 7, 3, and 1. And in the text materials, we'll just set the color to say blue, and we're just going to show numbers, and we'll show milliseconds this time. So we'll pause that and we'll come back once it's loaded. So you can see here we've got a clock that's counting down for 5 minutes. We just got to speed up the video here so that you can see once it reaches 0 seconds it's going to loop. So you can see here as we approach 0, it should loop back around to 5 minutes. Awesome. So that's the countdown clock looping. Next we're going to go on the count clock to from. So we come back in, we change it to clock count from to, and we want to sync with global time, which means it's synced with UTC, and we want to loop timer. So remember, when we're synced with UTC, we cannot pause these clocks if they're using UTC time. And we'll set the clock start time to say 20 seconds and the end time to 40 seconds, and it loops back around. And again, we just need to plug in these values. Again, 350, 90 for the rotation, plug in the plane and the back plate, and we'll put the back plate on again. And also we'll change the color this time to maybe blue. And we will show, don't need milliseconds, we'll just leave it, we'll turn off hours, and we'll turn off the letters this time so we can only see the numbers. So let's also, don't forget to set the backplate scale to 7, so 3 and 1, but you might need to change the scale depending on how big you want it. So we'll pause that and we'll come back into the game. So coming back into the game here, you see it starts at 20 seconds, and then once it hits 40 seconds, it should loop back around to 20 seconds. We can also go from 40 down to 20 if we want. And when they're ticking in UTC time, so here it's going to loop. You can see it loops back down to 20 seconds. When it's ticking in UTC time, these should all tick together nice and synchronously, but we'll show that towards the end. So next, we want to set a countdown to a date. So what we need to do is, if we want to get a date that's, let's say, 1 hour from now, the same day, we need to go to the UTC time converter. So we have this helpful website here called Dateful Convert to UTC Time. So my local time at the moment is 11:03. I'm based in Europe, so what we can do is we can get the UTC time zone. So let's set it to an hour from now. So we'll set the date. So the date today is 2025. The month is 8. It's August. The day is 20, and we will set the UTC time to 9:10. So we go hour, 9, and 10. So it should count down for about 6 minutes. And we want to stop on completed, and we'll just plug in the cube. Again, we need to set 350 for the translation and 90 for the rotation. And we need to plug in the back plate, and we'll just leave it on red, and we'll show just numbers, but we can show hours. Actually, let's set it for in 2 hours. So 10, so it should be 1 hour and about 1 hour and about 6 or 5 minutes. So if we pause that and we start again, come back into the game, now it is counting down 1 hour 4 minutes until we reach the UTC time that's been converted. So that would be, you know, whatever UTC time is relevant to your specific time zone that you want to set it for, or just a UTC time and date. And we can also use this to count up. So let's say we pass that date, it'll count away from it and start going up as it moves further away from that date. So lastly, I have clock counting up, but I shouldn't really need to explain these too much. So clock counting up is the same as clock counting down. We just start at a time, we can choose a speed. The clock count up, this one can be paused, and we can stop at a given time if we want it to stop. And then the clock count up looping, this one cannot be paused because it's using UTC, and this is just a clock that counts up from 0 to a given time. Like 3,600 seconds is 1 hour, so it would stop at 1 hour and then it would loop back around. So those are all the different clock settings. I hope it was really clear. If it wasn't clear, again, there'll be some links down below to a Discord where you can get in touch with me and ask me any questions, or just leave the questions in the comments below. So the last few things we're going to go over is the different material setups, and then we're going to go over how you can import a different font to set up your own kind of different looking text fonts for the actual clock device. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to set up a few different clocks, and we're going to go over how we can set up the material settings and what the material settings do. So we're just going to set up 3 different clocks. We'll have a clock counting up looping, and we will have, let's put in another one and another one. So we have 3 in our array here. We have a clock counting down looping and a clock counting from date to a date. So in the clock counting down looping, we've got set 1 hour. We make sure we plug in our counter mesh and our backplate mesh, and we will just turn on the back panel, and we'll turn on all of the checkboxes for the seconds and the milliseconds, and we'll do the same for our clock counting down looping. Make sure we plug in the counter mesh and the backplate, and then we set 350 and 90 for our rotation, and 7, 3, and 1 for our backplate's scale. and instead of 350, sorry, we want 450 or maybe 550 because we want it above it. And then we'll enable all of the options as well. And then lastly, this clock counting to from date, we'll set it again to a date, let's say 2025, the 10th month. So in 2 months, yeah, 1 day, 12 hours, that's fine. And we'll plug in our counter plane and our backplate. We'll set this one really high, so we'll go like maybe 1000, and we'll set the rotation to 90, and we'll set the scale up to 3 and the spacing up to 300, and the backplate scale we want to also multiply by 3, so we go 7 times 3 and 3 times 3 and just 3 in the last one. So 21, 9 and 3, and then we'll just check on all of these. And let's pause that and we'll start again and we'll see what we've got. Okay, so we have a few different clocks here. We've got a clock counting up, obviously, or counting down, sorry, towards 42 days, 2 hours, 50 minutes. We've got a clock that is counting down and looping every 60 minutes, and another clock that is counting up and looping every 10 minutes. So what we can do with the material settings is we can change the look and the colors and a few other options. So we'll just go over that now. So if we come into the material settings and we just come down here, so we have the text material, we can change the color. So let's have the bottom one as blue, and we'll set the emissive intensity to 10, so it's really, really bright, but we'll just leave the rest as it is, and we won't set it to face camera. That's okay. And we can set the back panel as well. We'll set the back panel to a blue as well, and we'll just close out the first. So on the second one, what we can do is let's set it to say, instead of setting a color, what we want to do is we want to use a gradient texture. So we'll set it to say galaxy gradient texture. We'll go use gradient effect, and now you'll see with the gradient effect it's going to have this kind of galaxy color panning over it. We'll look in a second. And then on the last one, we want to go set the gradient texture to fire, use gradient effect, and then we'll set these last ones to face the camera, and we'll set the back panel to maybe this kind of orange to match the fire kind of gradient. So really important, if you want it to spin and face where the player is as the player runs around it, we need to make sure we enable these checkboxes that say face camera. So we'll pause that and we'll start again. So there is currently a small bug with the material. If you are going to use the gradient textures to get these nice kind of rainbow or fire gradients, you might want to make sure that you set the text color back to white. So you could probably tint it if you wanted to set the rainbow gradient to maybe a little bit blue, a little bit red, or a little bit green. You could do that, but for now it's best to just have it as white, just 1, 1, 1 in the color values. So you can see when we come back into the game, we've got this nice kind of rainbow gradient, and then we're going to fix this one in the middle. So the one in the middle, let's say we want it as, I think it was this galaxy gradient. We want to set this to 1, 1, 1. We go OK, and then we can pause and start again, and you'll see now it's got this kind of nice rainbow kind of galaxy gradient on the one in the middle. Also, one last thing, if you're looking to hook into this asset through Verse, we have a function called the signal event function. So for each clock that we put into the array, in each class it has a timer has finished signal. So you can await this event here for when the timer has finished. So if you want to do something when that timer has finished, you can hook into that event and listen for that event. So lastly, with the countdown clock timer, I will include the Photoshop files so that you can edit the text yourself. So you just need to come in, select all these different texts. You can change to whatever font that you want. And then when we want to export, we want to just collapse all of these down. So we go merge, visible, and then we click with the select tool. We select and we can go grow, or sorry, not grow, I think we go modify, expand by say 3 pixels, or we go inverse, sorry, so we go inverse, modify, expand 3 pixels, or let's do it again, modify, expand another 3 pixels. So now you can see we've got this kind of stroke around our letters, and then we come down and we go Alt delete. So if we go Alt, if we set our alpha channel, so we come into the, once we merge, we come into the channels, we've got our alpha channel, we'll just set it to black for now, but we can do that again. We'll select, so we select inverse, modify to expand, and then we have say 6 pixels, and then we come down to our alpha channel and we just fill that expanded area in with white, Alt delete, or we can just fill it with white, and now we have our alpha mask, and you can see it's got this kind of black black stroke around it, and then we just go save as a target and we can import that. So once we've saved it, we import it, and then we can open up our material counter, and we just want to select these nodes here, the text sheet here, and we just replace it here with the text sheet. We need to do the same if we want to edit the countdown sign sheet, as well as the colon. So we want to replace the text sheet in the colon material, and if we want to replace the signs, then we have this parameter here, the sign sheet, the texture object. So we just need to replace those if we want to update the text font. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments down below. I've also left a link to the Discord, or you can reach out to me on Twitter. So thank you guys so much for your interest, and thank you so much for supporting VFX Vault, and I'll see you in the next one.